Hi everyone, welcome to the Sensory Explorers educational PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the presentation now. Give me one sec. Right, here we go. Okay, all right, so hello everyone, welcome. All right, so my name is Bridget Jost, and I am a student from Concordia University pursuing my doctorate in occupational therapy. And I am very excited to go on this educational journey with you as we talk about the Sensory Explorers program. If you want to grab a piece of paper just to jot some notes down, that is completely okay, or you can just listen. So this workshop is designed to support the sustainability and longevity of the program after I leave. My goal is that you feel confident, prepared, and empowered to continue implementing sensory-informed activities with children here at the Sensory Zone. Over the last 5 weeks, we explored many exciting activities rooted in sensory integration, play, and engagement. Today, I'm going to share with you not just what we did, but why we did it and how you can carry it forward. By the end of today, I hope you feel equipped with practical tools, strategies, and a deeper understanding of how sensory systems influence behavior and participation. So, to get to know each other a little bit, I know this is virtual, but in the in-person workshop, we did this as a fun game, so I'm still going to have us play it because I think it's a great experience. And so the game is, what kind of sensory person are you? So everyone, before we talk about kids and sensory processing, we're actually going to talk about you first. But guess what? You also have sensory systems as well. This is not a test. There are no right or wrong answers. I just want you to think of the answers and the different sensory experiences you may really like or may not like. All right, are you ready to get started? Okay, so do you love roller coasters? Ooh, you do, adrenaline crew. Um, I personally do not like it, but I think a lot of people do. Do you hate loud chewing noises? Do they drive you absolutely insane? They do for me, but you may like them. All right. Do clothing tags bother you? What do you think? For me, they do, especially like ones behind the neck, but or on the side. Those kind of drive me a little crazy. Do cluttered spaces stress you out? Hmm. Being in a tight space. What do you think? For me, I do not like being in closed spaces. They kind of freak me out. Do certain textures of foods make you gag? Hmm. Yes or no? Do you crack your knuckles or stretch a lot? I know for me, cracking my knuckles is like a stress reliever for me, especially like before like this presentation, for example, or before like a test in school. Do you get hangry? I think all of us could say we get hangry at one point or another. Do you get distracted when multiple people talk at once? I do sometimes, especially when I'm trying to concentrate really hard on something. Do you get car sick easily? For me personally, I have to sit in the front, in the passenger or driving. If I sit in the back, I get car sick. Do you bounce your leg when you are studying? Yes or no? Do you love spicy food? Who are my spicy food lovers out there? Okay, so notice how different everyone is. Not, no one is wrong. They just have different sensory experiences that they like or dislike. Children are the same as sensory preferences shape their behavior. Now, imagine going back being 4, 5, or 6 years old and not having the words to explain what your body needs. See how complicated sometimes that can be? When a child crashes into things, covers their ears, refuses messy play, spinning nonstop, it may not just be a bad behavior, it might be their sensory system communicating. And that is why Sensory Explorers is built around this. Okay, so now we're going to kind of dive deeper. What is sensory integration? So, sensory integration is how the brain takes all that sensory information that is coming in from multiple avenues and it's trying to organize it into like a functional manner so we can understand what's kind of going on. Every single day, our body is taking information around the world. So, what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we smell, or even what we taste. But it doesn't stop there. You're also processing movement, body position, balance, and internal signals like hunger, thirst, or even anxiety. All that information goes to your brain, and your brain has to organize it so you can move, focus, and respond and interact with the world in an appropriate manner. For most people, this happens automatically. You don't even really think about it. But for some people, their brains have difficulty processing and organizing all this sensory information. And when that happens, everyday tasks become really challenging at times. So for children, for example, this can make daily activity challenging. So like getting dressed, sitting at circle time at school, eating certain foods, playing with peers, or following directions from like their teachers. And sometimes what looks like maybe a misbehavior is actually a child having a difficult time processing this information. So my question is, think to yourself about this. What behaviors or misbehaviors have you seen at the zone that might be sensory related? Some of you might be newer employees, so you may not know, but some of you may have from just shadowing experiences, understand, or working with children who have special needs. What are some behaviors? Some behaviors may be like, again, kind of what they're saying. Maybe they're spinning a lot, they're jumping a lot on the trampoline, they're crashing a lot. Those are some examples. Okay, so here's kind of a visual to break down what sensory integration is and how it helps. So at the sensory zone and in sensory integration therapy, we use play-based activities to help children's brains get better at organizing sensory information. So they're also engaging to them as well. It's not worksheets, it's not sitting at a table doing drills, it's purposeful play. And those activities are carefully chosen and adjusted based on what the child needs. And then this helps them respond better and thrive in their daily life. All right, so then we have this visual. It kind of gives you what the different senses are. And then we're actually going to watch a video next. So I kind of gave it away. How many senses are there? And most people think there are 5 in the world, but actually there are 8. So we're going to watch this video to kind of give you a better idea of breaking down each sense. All right. I hope that you enjoyed that video and I hope it gave you a little more in depth about each of the different senses. So then this is a nice little visual that you can refer to for the 8 senses. I also created my own visual that I have provided for Courtney, and I will share that with you so you can kind of see what that looks like. So this is a breakdown of all the 8 senses that were discussed in the video. So it goes through each and every one. It gives you an example again of what. So if you are working with a child and you are kind of forgetting what exactly that sense is, especially for like vestibular or proprioception, this will be a good um, definition for you. It also will say when a child may be having like experiences that they may be avoiding a certain sense or something that helps support that sense. So, like, for example, a child may be avoiding like bright lights, they may be asking for like sunglasses, or they may be staring at like spinning objects. And then to help maybe support that visual sense, you can reduce like visual clutter. So like for me, example, I wanted my background to be plain. So there wasn't anything distracting, but like thinking of like a classroom setting where there's a bunch of like posters and stuff. So reducing the amount of posters on like a wall or like a visual schedule is important for children and like breaking down like what they're doing for the day, let's say in a classroom setting. Auditory, so again, the processing of sound. They may be like covering their ears, they may be distracted by noise. To support, you can lower that background noise or just giving like one simple step directions rather than like giving them a lot of multiple directions at once. Olfactory and smell, again, responding to different scents. Children may be super sensitive to certain smells. They may be covering their nose if they're having too much of that input. Um, Something to help is like to avoid like those stronger fragrances that they're more sensitive to. Um, give notice if scents will be present. So like saying like, hey, you may be smelling bubble gum because someone just put gum in their mouth, just to kind of give them that foreshadowing so they're not surprised by that smell. Gustatory, so again, processing different flavors, and those all flavors are listed. Watch for selective eating, so they may be picking out like certain kids, like, and we may have all experienced, we didn't want to have our vegetables when we were younger, so they may not be eating vegetables, they may be eating more like fries or chicken tenders. Seeking more intense flavors, so like that could be sour, that could be that spicy. Um, and then to help support, like offer different input when appropriate. So like some children have like that jewelry that you may see them. Crunchy snacks may give that flavor or that input that they're seeking. And then also just introducing new flavors gradually. Tactile. So that's touch. That can be with hands or feet. So processing different textures, temperature, or physical contact. What to watch for? Avoiding like messy play. So if there's like fingerprint and they're not wanting to put their finger like in the paint, or maybe the opposite, and they're actually seeking like constant touch. Like they need those hugs, they need tight squeezes to support like allowed choice and like the material they may be touching. So if they like more soft, letting them have that versus like rough. And then gradually exposing them to like those textures that they are uncomfortable with at that time and respecting their like personal space. Like if they're really not wanting touch, letting them having their space and not getting into their personal bubble, like we say. Proprioception, that is that body positioning and movement and also just body awareness. Watching for again, kind of that crashing, pushing, using too much or even too little force to help support is like heavy work activities. So like pushing, pulling, animal walks like frog jumps, crab walk, bear crawl, and then also like carrying heavy items. They could be carrying things just with their arms or even in a backpack. Vestibular, helping detect, remember that head movement and the balance. So they may be like spinning constantly, or it's the opposite again. They may be fear of like moving their bodies. Some activities is like controlled swinging, obstacle courses, especially like working on that balance piece, and then slow rhythmic movement. And then finally, interoception, recognizing those internal cues. So maybe they have difficulty recognizing when they are feeling like super sad or super angry, or when they are hungry or tired, or they may be having like accidents because they're not recognizing when they have to go to the bathroom. So to support that, help like label their feelings or giving them like visuals of like, oh, right now I'm feeling happy and I'm smiling. Or I'm feeling sad and I have tears. Giving those visual cues as well. And then also using like a simple check-in, like just asking, are you hungry? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Maybe we should try to go to the bathroom. Or are you feeling tired today? So hopefully that little handout will help you out and you'll be given that by Courtney. All right, now we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about sensory responsiveness. So think about this as how someone strongly reacts to like that sensory input that we've been talking about. Think of it as an example like a volume knob. So for some children, the volume knob is turned way down, and that is hypo-responsiveness. Their sensory threshold is high, so that means they need a lot of input before their brain can register it. And some examples is they may crash into things, they seek spinning, or intense movement. And maybe for like auditory, they don't hear when their name gets called. So those are some examples. On the other hand, that's when the volume then turns way up, and that's hyper responsiveness. So their sensory threshold is lower, so even small amounts of input can be very overwhelming for a child. So normal sounds may sound really loud, so they may cover their ears. Normal touch may feel irritating, so again, kind of where they're not wanting hugs. They may also avoid like that messy play I was talking about. They may also be upset by like bright lights. They may need those sunglasses, and then normal movement may feel scary to them. So to give you kind of like a real life example, imagine someone blasting music in your headphones at full volume when you weren't expecting it, and you're like, that's how sensory input can feel, especially for like a hyper responsive child. And then imagine like you're trying to listen to music through broken headphones and you're like, I can't hear this. And that's when you can't. Children can feel that hypo responsiveness. So at the sensory zone, we're constantly adjusting that volume for the children we work with. So for hypo, we may increase it. So then again, it's easier to register and it's at a safe amount. And then for hyper, we may reduce that input so then the child feels safe and it's not too overwhelming for them. So it's not about stopping the behavior, it's about meeting the nervous system and where it is. So I would have given a break. So if you want to pause this video and take a break, stretch out a little bit, crack your knuckles, you can totally do that. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on. So now another game. I wanted to make it fun for you. So in the in-person, we did teams, but for this, we're just going to have you just do it. So now that we just learned the 8 senses, let's see if our brains are organizing all of that information we just took in. So I'll read a situation and you decide what sensory system is involved. The goal is starting to think more like a sensory informed staff. So again, naming the correct, we won't do, if you want to keep track and how many points you get, totally can do that. All right, round 1, here we go. A child spins in circles over and over during free play. What sensory system do we think? Spinning, think about spinning. That's kind of the main word. Vestibular system. All right, next question. Is the child seeking or avoiding movement? So thinking again, hypo versus hyper. So are they seeking that spinning or are they avoiding it? Ding, ding, seeking. Easy one, right? Okay, a child covers their ears when the vacuum turns on. Ooh, I've had this a few times working with children, and even myself too when it's unexpected. What sensory system is that? You're using there's the keyword ears, auditory. All right, is this sensory seeking or avoiding? And then, yeah, I know you guys got this one. Avoiding. All right, a child crashes into beanbags and pushes heavy mats across the room. What sensory system is this? What do you think? There could technically be two answers, but I'm really focused on one. Proprioception. Why might this type of input be regulating to a child? It's kind of stepping it up a notch. Why do you think proprioception is regulating? Any guesses? So proprioception input actually helps to calm and organize the nervous system. Okay, so this is one of the important things to remember about proprioception. It's more helpful in organizing the nervous system overall and all that input that's being received. All right, next round, here we go. A child refuses to finger paint and pulls their hand away quickly. This one I've kind of talked about already, so this should be an easy one. Tactile. Okay, what could staff do to support this child? What could they do for this to help with this? Think about it for a second. Good. If you want to write your answer down or shout it out. So you could offer tools. So you could offer them a paintbrush rather than having to use their fingers so they don't have to have all that paint on them. Gradually exposing them. So that could be like a child, you could be like, hey, I know that this can be overwhelming at times, so we're just going to do a little bit of paint on our fingers. So you could say, we're going to just use our pointer or our thumb today rather than like their whole hand. And then offering them a choice. So making it more fun and motivating for them. So like offering like, oh, what color paint should we use today? So giving them that choice and like independence in that. And then next question. A child gets distracted by posters, toys, and movement around the room during circle time. Whew. Sometimes I get distracted too. Don't worry. All right, what sensory system? Give me a sec. Visual, yes. So their eyes, right? And like seeing all the different things on the walls. What environmental change could help? So what could help with this? What do you think? What could we do? So you can reduce visual clutter by taking down some of those posters. So there's only like a few rather than like 10 per se. You can also change where they're seated so then they're not distracted by like what's around them. So then maybe you put them in an area where there's like not a poster. So then that way they're not distracted by what's on the wall. A child gags when smelling strong markers during art class. Whew. Anyone experienced this before? I have a few times, especially for particular scents. Which one? And again, kind of giving you hints. Olfactory with your nose. Is this sensory seeking or avoiding? What do you think if they're trying to avoid, or maybe they're gagging? That one would kind of be an easy one. They're avoiding it, right? I kind of gave you the answer. Sorry. All right, round 3. Now we're really going to work on that clinical thinking. A child only eats bland foods and refuses mixed textures. There may be more than one sensory system for this one, just to give you a hint. So bland foods only. I was like that as a child too. I could only eat white foods. I could only eat mashed potatoes or pasta. So not the only one that's experienced this. All right, so gustatory, so again, kind of that taste, and then also tactile, because in your mouth, you can also have tactile receptors, which have like figuring out that texture. So like either like, let's say soft or like kind of rougher foods, or that have different textures. So like cottage cheese is a good one. So different things like that, that your mouth can kind of, besides just like taste. Okay, why might texture matter here? Why do you think that? It kind of give you an answer already, but so you're sensitive to different textures. So like for me, I don't like cottage cheese at all. I do not like the chunkiness. Or like some people, maybe yogurt might be something that they don't like. So again, just different sensitivities to different textures. A child frequently says, I'm fine, but suddenly melts down and can't explain why. What sensory system is that? And kind of think of like, what do you think? Interoception. All right. And then what does this system help with? And that is recognizing those internal signals, such as hunger, pain, and emotions as well. All right. Final round. Last two questions. These ones are a little trickier. A child runs nonstop, crashes into others, talks loudly, and struggles to sit for a group activity. And there is multiple sensory systems. Which ones are involved? Give you a sec to kind of reread it because there is a lot of information there. Okay, and your guess? Proprioception and vestibular. Also auditory. So again, kind of that running around, crashing, struggling to sit. So a lot of movement there, right? And then also then the loud, like talking loudly, that was the auditory maybe. So again, there could be three here. All right. What could the staff add before group time to help with this? So what is something you could have the child do before maybe joining a group? Give you a sec to think. So heavy work, which is kind of what I talked about. So they could maybe do some like pushing. Maybe they could do some like wall pushes. They could do some pulling. Maybe they're like pulling a rope towards them. Obstacle courses are excellent and super motivating for children. And then also just providing movement break. Let's say that you do like that heavy work before and then they're in the group, but then they're like, I need to get back up. I need to move. So then providing like a break. So you'd be like, all right, we're going to sit for a couple minutes and then why don't you go do some wall pushes? So giving them that break time as well. A child refuses messy play, covers their ears when peers get loud, and becomes upset during transition. So, like, for example, a transition could be that they're going to lunch or they're going to like a special. Or at the sensory zone, it could be like when they're going from the gym to the game room. So those are some examples. So what sensory systems? So tactile and auditory for sure. So again, like the refusing of messy play, covering their ears when loud noises are happening from peers. And then also like maybe a vestibular or even proprioception. So like that movement aspect with like movement during the transition. So what is the most important first step as staff to help with this? So what do you think would be the first thing to help? Think about it. There could be multiple answers to this. There's no right or wrong again. So like first you want to get them into that optimal state before like transitioning, for example. So if they're like really seeking a lot of movement, doing something so then they're in a more optimal state before moving to a different area, adjusting the environment. So again, when they're covering those ears, giving them headphones. So again, that noise is getting blocked out and then providing like sensory support before expecting like participation. So again, kind of getting those wiggles out or giving them like fidgets or like have them do some deep breathing so they start to get regulated and calmer or like putty. Again, there's so many different tools out there that you could use and just really making it for the child and individualized to like what they like. All right. Good job, everybody. Well done. So notice something. Rarely is it just a behavior. We've talked about sensory needs here today. And, some of the kids who might come across also will have other things in addition to sensory. They may have like motor challenges or even cognitive differences. And that makes direction following maybe challenging for them at the sensory zone or staying attentive to like what you're saying to them. So when you understand what sensory system is involved, you can respond intentionally instead of reacting emotionally. Sensory systems are part of that, but only part. It's good for us to always be curious about ourselves. Like, what am I seeing? Why might that be going on? rather than like, what is wrong with the child? Like, what's going on? Um, and then this is what makes the difference between supervising children at the zone versus like supporting them. Okay. Break time. If you need a little break, go right ahead and you can pause. Otherwise, again, I'm gonna keep on going. All right, so now we're gonna really get into like what Sensory Explorers was. So I'm gonna give you kind of a quick overview of what that looked like. For the program, I did have 4 children that participated. They were wonderful and I loved them and I miss them. Overall, the Sensory Explorers program was 5 weeks. It was designed intentionally. Each week, we target all of the 8 senses in a meaningful and then a play-based way. And then also children were like leading in the activities as well. Sessions were 60 minutes total. 50 minutes of that was child-led, movement-rich activities. And that means we followed like the children's interests. We adjusted challenges that may have occurred in the moment and prioritizing that engagement and in a nice regulated state. And then the final 10 minutes were the family education portion. So we provided parents with practical strategies, simple explanation, and tools that they could use at the home as well. So this program is grounded in area sensory integration principles. This is kind of referring back to like my capstone project. So I'm going to say ASI for short. ASI is evidence-based. It focuses on providing like that just right challenge. So making it where it's not too easy for the child or too overwhelming that they don't want to participate. So in that way, the brain can lead to them processing that information more effectively because again, it's just right for them. And then it emphasizes active participation, intrinsic motivation. So again, what motivates them internally. So like things that they like to do. And then also the therapeutic power of play, making sure that it's fun. But not only fun, but also developing skills that then can be supporting their everyday life participation and learning. So when you see kids swinging, crashing, climbing, or building obstacle courses, that isn't random. The program was meant to be play focused. So again, what's motivating to them, but it's movement rich, so it gets their bodies moving, and then also regulation focused. So then again, they're in an optimal state to participate. Everything we did had a purpose to support children's ability to process that input. All right. So why does play matter? So play is how children learn, grow, and have fun, and it's very important for them. Play supports physical, social, emotional, and cognitive development. Children with sensory integration challenges or disabilities may play differently, which can make learning new skills a little more challenging for them. Through play, children practice movement, problem solving, social skills, and attention. And sensory explorers used play as the main way to engage in those sensory activities. Learning and development happen naturally in a fun and supportive environment. So the goals: improve occupational participation. If you're like, what is that? Just wait, hold on a sec. Also increase their regulation skills. So again, getting them to learn how to regulate their bodies. Also helping children explore safely, educating families in simple terms, and then promoting carryover then into their home, school, and community. So what is occupational participation? I said this before. What do you think it is? Okay, I'll give you a sec to think about it. So occupational participation means being able to do those everyday activities that matter successfully, confidently, and with as much independence as possible. For children, I'm going to kind of break down. So these are different occupations listed here. So ADLs, IADLs, and then continued on. So I'm going to break down each one so you kind of know what it is. So ADLs, it's like getting dressed, eating meals. IADLs is more like taking care of like their pets. So if they have like a goldfish or a dog. Play, that one's an easy one. So just playing with peers or family members. Leisure, Could be their family likes to go to a local park and they like to climb on the playground equipment with like their siblings. School participation, that is pretty easy. So sitting like in circle time, learning something in science, managing their emotions throughout the day. And then I skipped sleep and rest, but that one's pretty straightforward, just getting the right quality of sleep. And then social participation. So that's again, participating in school, spending time with like their peers or their family. So any socialization, essentially. So I'm going to try to go pretty fast with this. So I'm going to kind of break down each week for you and how it was structured and what we did during the Sensory Explorers program. So the general structure of the Sensory Explorers program included like a movement activity. So again, we kind of got those wiggles out to start. So then it kind of got them in that more regulated state. Then we would do like a self-regulation activity. So it was individualized each week to different activities. So the child could build like a sensory toolkit so they would know different activities that they could do to help regulate themselves. It also then became it included an educational component, so about the different senses that we focused on that week. And then it was a group activity, which was wonderful too. And then following each session, then we had that education piece for families and supporting and understanding what we did during the group session and then carrying that over then into the home environment. So week one, we did mostly just building rapport and relationships with the kiddos, as was my first week. So we did a musical dots dance party, so kind of like musical chairs, but with musical dots. So they would go around in a circle. And then I made it fun where there would be a colored dot throughout the gym. And they would run to a colored dot. And then at that dot, they would then answer a question. So it's kind of just get to know you activity. Our self-regulation was deep breathing and yoga. So they learned about the importance of breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. And then we incorporated that with yoga. So then we did different yoga poses, such as like mountain tree, cat, cow, or butterfly pose. And then they would work on their breathing while holding a yoga pose. And then just meeting our super eight senses. So I was super excited to just introduce all the different senses. The kids really got into this activity and then they would write them down. Week two. So a little bit more continuing on with building that rapport and stuff. So we did 3 facts or 2 truths and a lie. And then after that, we did bubble mindfulness. We didn't have enough time to do this because the 3 facts took a while because the kids were really into it. So bubble mindfulness was a great self-regulation. It actually worked on what we focused on that week for the senses, which was visual and auditory. So visually, they would watch bubbles go across this screen. So it was working on that scanning with their eyes, but then also they were working on breathing at the same time. And then we had a cool spring scavenger hunt. So we worked on that visual and auditory sense. So kids would go around looking for different spring pictures around the gym. And then they would come back and then we worked on our hearing. So then they would press a button and it would have a different animal noise and they would have identify what that animal noise was. So we did like frog, cow, chick. Those were just some examples. Week 3. So we did a high 5 calming strategy. This one might be a new one to you. So the kids would then trace their hands on a piece of paper and post 5 different activities they could do to help regulate. So that was one of them was breathing, which we've done a lot, counting to 10, peaceful place. So they would find a place that was peaceful for them, talking to like someone that they trust, and then squeeze and relax. So again, kind of like an example is squeezing in your fist and then relaxing. So those were just different strategies that they could use. Then as a group, we did guess the smell, which was fun. The kids would be blindfolded and I would have a little bottle that would have a different smell in it. They would smell it and then they would look at their little chart and they would say, I think this smells like lemon, or I think it smells like cinnamon. So that was a fun one for them. And then finally, we worked on interoception. So that was the other sense we focused on. We talked about different emotions. So then they would play a matching game. So again, all the cards would be flipped over, and then kids would try to match and find the correct emotion. We also talked about like what your body feels for certain emotions, and then thinking about like those tools, like deep breathing. Like if you're in an angry state, maybe deep breathing helps you get into that more regulated, optimal state. Week 4 was super fun. It was St. Patrick's Day week. We did a rainbow adventure, which was kids would then be doing different rainbow activities for around the gym to get that movement. Next would be rainbow and four-leaf clover. So kind of the rainbow and four-leaf clover is shown. So they would do different breathing exercises with those. St. Patrick's Shamrock Play-Doh. That was a fun one. I made some homemade Play-Doh, and then each kiddo got to color it a different color that they wanted. Then they could also put a smell in it and also put little manipulatives, so like gold coins or little shamrocks in it. And then finally, we worked on taste as well. So we did touch and taste. Taste was then fun too. They were blindfolded and they tasted each color of the rainbow, which was different fruits. So like red was strawberries, yellow was bananas. They really liked that one. And then finally, last week, which was very sad, but it was spring break. So what we did is we did a fun spring duck and egg hunt. So kids would go around the gym space collecting eggs and ducks. And then they did a spring into movement in the gym as well. So we worked really focused on proprioception and vestibular this week. Movement was they did like caterpillar crawls, or they did butterfly twirls with like scarves. They also did some heavy work with like carrying bean bags from flower to flower. So we were saying pollinating the flowers. So just different movement activities that were spring, or bunny hops. That was another fun one. Bubble machine, that was just a fun experience to end the whole Sensory Explorers program. It was great because they still had movement where they were trying to pop bubbles, and then when they popped the bubble, it actually would release a smell. So that was cool. It was fruit punch flavor, which was nice. And then they just had a survey to fill out just to see how they all enjoyed the program. All right, that is it for that. And then if you need a little break, we only have one more section and then we're all done. Next is parent education. So an important part of Sensory Explorers wasn't working with the children, it was partnering also with families. Each week, families receive weekly PowerPoints, which is shown on the screen. That is a snap of just a picture from one of the PowerPoint slides. They were written in layperson language, so it was clear, simple, and easy to understand for them. I intentionally avoided that medical jargon so then parents could feel confident about applying the concepts that I taught them. We included also visual aids to help explain what the 8 senses were, which is also you have one, and sensory processing in a way that made sense for them. Each week, we also covered that hyper versus hypo responsiveness, which I discussed with you as well, and recognizing that children or families could recognize that with like their children at home. More importantly, we also provided home strategies that were practical and easy to incorporate. They could implement it right away in their home environment. And then also we gave them a take-home activity. So then it encouraged that carryover, but also shared experiences between children and their families. Why is family education so important? I'll give you a little bit to think about this. Why do you think this is so important in addition to just the children participating in the group? Think about it. So children are here for a short period of time, right? At the sensory zone, they're there maybe an hour or two, a couple days a week, but families are with them every single day. If strategies only happen at the sensory zone, progress is going to be very limited, especially if they're not carrying it over into the home or school settings. When families understand what sensory processing is, they stop seeing it as behavior, kind of like how I'm trying to emphasize in this presentation. It's not seen as bad, it's them communicating to us. And that shift changes everything for a parent. Family education turns this program into something sustainable. It empowers families. In empowering families, we support stronger children participation in their occupations that are important to them. It is important to build this relationship with family to help them understand their child better. That is the whole purpose, right? A simple report of how they did during their time at the sensory zone is perfect to continue that collaboration with families or asking things maybe that are happening at home or school as well. And most of you already do this already. And so for the new ones, this is very important. Why does this matter for you now? You are essential to sustaining this sensory practice at the sensory zone. You model self-regulation. Children will be able to regulate themselves in a quicker fashion. You create safe spaces for them to explore their senses. You reinforce that sensory language, and you also bridge communication between children and their families. You integrate those regulation strategies, and then they also carry that over into their home. And you sustain the culture of sensory informed practice at the sensory zone. So when staff consistently use that sensory language, saying like your body looks fast, your body looks slow, your body looks tired, prompting those regulation tools. So again, breathing, heavy work, that movement, and then maintaining accessible sensory support. So like giving them visuals, giving them those tools, giving them different movements they can do. This practice then becomes part of the culture and not just a single program. Children receive consistent messaging. Their sensory language becomes normalized. Regulation tools then become internalized. They understand what they are. Families experience continuity, and outcomes remain meaningful. So this consistency builds trust and carryover with families. That trust and carryover then increases that participation. And then that participation makes children more independent and long-term success for them in the future. So, little quiz quick. What can you say? What could you say instead of calm down to a child? Instead of saying, Rebecca, calm down, or Jake, calm down. What could you say instead? I'll give you a sec to think. Okay. All right. Some ideas that I've come up with. Let's take a body break. What does your body need right now? Want to push the wall? Let's breathe together. Are you feeling fast or are you feeling slow? And then to quickly reflect, you can like write down some answers or you can think about it. So what surprised you about the Sensory Explorers program or the workshop today? What will you try differently in your daily work working with children at the sensory zone? What sense do you feel more confident supporting and why, or even you feel less confident? What strategies or tools do you think will be most helpful to families? What challenges do you anticipate and how might you address them? And then real quick, one quick share. This is also going to be provided to Courtney. This is going to show you tips and tricks. So this kind of gives you about like how to help children at the sensory zone. So like following the child's lead, having them engage and connect with their interest. This is very motivating to them and that helps their increase their participation and also carry over. Offering choices, so giving them that autonomy and then reducing that power struggle. So having them decide what they want to do supports that independence, increases their motivation to like buy into what you're wanting them to do. And then limiting their choices just to 2 options. So then they don't feel so overwhelmed. Adding that heavy work. Remember I said proprioception is like calming and organizing to the nervous system. So here are some examples here. Modeling that regulation. So again, using those tools. Using clear and simple language. So again, limiting that amount of cues, making it where it's just like single or a couple words rather than a lot, because that could be overwhelming. And then it helps them process while giving them some time. And then watch for those cues. Again, looking at what they're doing. Again, remember, it's them communicating to you what they're needing. Using movement before tabletop. So it may not apply to you, but if you're wanting to like then do like a coloring activity, giving them that movement first and then doing like something calming. And then these are just some other supports as well to like what could improve your skill set as someone that's working with children at the sensory zone. All right, that is about it, everybody. You're not going to do any of that. So I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to attend this virtual workshop today. I hope that even in this short period of time, I was able to strengthen your knowledge, build practical skills, and provide tools that support the sensory zone's continued success. If you have any questions, ask Courtney, and if I'm still around, you can ask me. Best of luck, and let's make a difference one life at a time at the sensory zone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much. Bye.